As we begin the Book of Devarim, we're launching ourselves back in time. Moses takes us back through the Israelites' arduous wandering, recalling all that the people have overcome and learned along the way. Every step has prepared them for this moment, as they stand ready to enter and conquer the land with God as their partner. Between admonitions, Moses' tone is encouraging and optimistic. Re'eh natati lifnechem et haaretz. See, I placed the land at your disposal. In other words, you can do this. Bo'u urshu et haaretz. Go, take possession of the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to assign to them and to their heirs after them. God is cheering the Israelites on, hopeful that they will seize this opportunity and build the ethical society conveyed to them through the Torah's mitzvot. In this new land, they can live in a way that honors the dignity of every life in manifold ways, by lifting the burden from a struggling animal, preserving trees in the midst of warfare, paying workers fairly and on time, appointing judges in every town who will enact justice impartially, and most of all by loving the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, and treating all people equally. These are the ways Israel can become a manifestation of God's highest dreams for humanity. These are the ways Israel can become worthy of possessing and keeping the land. We read Parshat Devarim on this Shabbat before Erev Tisha B'Av, our national day of mourning. Ironically, the main text associated with Tisha B'Av stands in contrast to the optimism of Devarim that I just shared. On Wednesday night, we will read Eicha and lament how far we have fallen from the dreams we held for our life in the land of Israel. Eicha yashva vadad ha'ir rabati am, haita ka'almana, rabati vagoyim, sarati bamdinot, haita lamas. Alas, Eicha, lonely sits the city once great with people. She that was great among nations has become like a widow. The princess among states has become a thrall. As we enter the Book of Devarim, we stand on the heights of hope at the outset of our journey into the land, as we begin the adventure of national sovereignty. Immersing ourselves in Eicha, we sink to deepest despair. We mourn the downfall of Jerusalem and the destruction of our temple, the collapse of a society once filled with our hopes and dreams, now desecrated and bereft. And it's not just the physical destruction that we grieve. Reading these ancient words of lamentation, we're plunged into spiritual darkness. We mourn God's absence as we have seemingly come to the end of the journey we began together so long ago. Our Haftorah also evokes this sense of sorrow as Isaiah predicts the first destruction of Jerusalem. Artechem shemama, your land is a waste. Your cities burnt down. Fair Zion is left like a booth, a sukkah in a vineyard, like a hut in a cucumber field, like a city beleaguered. Like the opening words of Devarim, we too have lofty hopes for the modern state of Israel. We yearn for a state grounded in the prophetic values of justice and equality for all its citizens. And from here in South Orange, New Jersey, it may seem that Israel today is on the verge of a civil war, that destruction is also just around the corner. With a far-right-wing Haredi ultranationalist government in power, attempting to usurp the high court, empower violent settlers against Palestinians, attack the independent media, and label the left as traitors, it's clear that Israel, as a Zionist liberal democracy, is struggling to survive. Just as our own democracy has politicians who seek to dismantle it. In my visit to Israel this month, where I had the privilege of studying at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, and I want to thank you all and this community for supporting my going there and having the ability to learn there. Thank you. I had the opportunity to take a class with Rachel Korazim on the poetry of crisis and dissent, or as she alternatively titled it, When Israelis Take to the Streets Against Their Government. We read Israeli poetry from the 1950s, the 1980s, and the 2000s, grappling with the burning issues of the time. Whether Israel should accept German reparations, anger over Israel's participation in the First Lebanon War and the massacre at Sabra and Shatila, and the disengagement from Gaza. Israelis are no strangers to standing up to their government. whether through passionate political poetry or through rallying in the streets, and the impressive protest movement taking place in Israel over these last 7 months continues this tradition. And though this coalition isn't showing signs of collapse, neither is the resolve of the protesters, who continue to show up week after week. They insist on making their voices heard, blocking highways, interrupting everyday life because life is not normal right now, and proudly waving the Israeli flag. They want to show that they are true patriots, invoking the sacred values on which Israel was founded. They want to preserve the High Court's power to veto legislation, to protect the rights of women and LGBTQ Israelis. They want to stop the coalition from replacing civil servants with political appointees. At the demonstrations I got to attend in Jerusalem, I saw families, young and old, reservists, doctors, union members, observant and secular people, all coming together. I heard a large contingent chanting Daila Kibush and the occupation, because how can Israelis talk about democracy without also talking about the Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem who are barred from voting in Knesset elections and Israel's rule over Palestinians in the West Bank? I did not see an Israel on the verge of destruction. The opposite. Like many of us, countless thousands of Israelis are fighting to protect their democracy. I witnessed an active, engaged civil society torn apart over its government. Israelis are not sitting on the sidelines as the government seeks to dismantle their democracy. As one protest sign read, "The dictatorship is here, we must not remain apathetic." To me, the book of Eicha serves as a warning for Israelis and for us of what could happen if we do not speak out and fight when our country's fundamental identity is threatened. How did the temple's destruction happen? The sages offer many explanations, most of which ignore the role of the Babylonian and Roman empires, except as God's tools for Israel's punishment. The sages argue that the Israelites' own ritual and moral failings led to their society's downfall. They violated Shabbat and failed to recite the Shema in the morning and at night. Children were kept from studying Torah, and scholars were disparaged. People lacked shame and became untrustworthy toward each other. The community lacked cohesion, mutual respect, and Torah as their guide. The destruction of ancient Israel did not happen overnight. It began with prophetic warnings, the words of poets cautioning their people, telling them what would happen if they did not change their ways. The next stage came on the 17th of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were breached. And finally, on the 9th of Av, it all came to an end. The city was besieged, the temple was destroyed, the people were enslaved and sent into diaspora. Jewish tradition dictates that all prophetic discourse and all rabbinic discourse end with a nechemta, a word of consolation. So what consolation do I find at this dire moment for Israeli society? I take some comfort in these words by the great Israeli writer and patriot Yossi Klein Halevi. He writes, "Israel was not only built and planted and defended, but sung into existence." Yehoshua Cohen, a veteran of the pre-state underground, the Stern Group, once said to me, "Do you know why we defeated the British? Because we never stopped singing." Israel sustains itself through song, from soldiers on the final stretcher march of their basic training, to neighbors coming together for an evening of communal singing. By immersing in Hebrew music, I learned the code of Israeliness, that mixture of cynicism and outrage and love of country that is playing out in our streets today. "How I love you, land of Israel," Arik Einstein sings. "So why am I so sad, land of Israel?" The great anthem of working class rage, Eli Luzon's "What a Country," protests against scheming politicians, unreasonable taxes, the end of the Zionist vision. He sang, "Where's the morality? What a disgrace." But like the ancient prophets, Luzon ends his indictment of Israel with words of comfort. "Despite the mess and all the failures, you are our beloved country for all generations to come." Israelis will not stop protesting, and they will not stop singing. They will continue to fight for their beloved country, and so must we. Shabbat Shalom.